Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we will hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 18, texts 26 through 29. we can do 20, we can chant 26 together and then I'll do the rest. Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Vrishaparvatamajnaya
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Prakrityanika vivakshitam
Gurung prasadayan mudna
Gurum prasadayan murtya
Padayo patita pate
Padayo patitah pati
Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Gurung prasadayan mudna
Gurum prasadayan murtya
Padayo patita pate
Padayo patitah pati
Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Gurung prasadayan mudna
Gurum prasadayan murtya
Padayo patita pate.
Padayo patitah pati
Others please.
Vrishaparvatam ajnaya
Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Gurum prasadayan murdna
Gurum prasadayan murdna
Padayos patita pati
Padayo patitah pati Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Gurum prasadayan murdna
Gurum prasadayan mudna
Padayo patitah pati
Padayo patitapati Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Vrishaparvatamagyaya
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Pratyanika vivakshitam
Gurum prasadayan mudna
Gurum prasadayan murdna
Padayo patitah pati
Padayo patitah pati Vrishaparvatamagyaya Pratyanika vivakshitam Gurum prasadayan murdna Padayo patitah pati Vrishaparvatamagyaya Pratyanika vivakshitam Gurum prasadayan murdna Padayo patitah pati
Word to word. Vrishaparva,
Vrishaparva,
the king of the demons.
king of the demons.
Tamagyaya,
Tamagyaya,
understanding the motive of Shukracharya.
Understanding the motive of Shukracharya
Pratyanika,
Pratyanika,
some curse.
some curse.
Vivakshitam,
Vivakshitam,
desiring to speak.
desiring to speak.
Gurum,
Gurum,
his spiritual master Shukracharya.
his spiritual master Shukracharya.
Prasadayat,
Prasadayat,
he satisfied immediately.
he satisfied immediately.
Murtna,
Murdna,
with his head.
with his head.
Padayo,
Padayo,
at the feet.
at the feet.
Patita,
Patita,
fell down.
fell down.
Pati,
Pati,
on the road.
on the road.
Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. King Vrishaparva understood that Shukracharya was coming to chastise or curse him. Consequently, before Shukracharya came to his house, Vrishaparva went out and fell down in the street at the feet of his guru and satisfied him, checking his wrath. Responsively, please. King Vrishaparva understood
King Vrishaparva understood
that Shukracharya was coming to chastise or curse him.
That Shukracharya was coming to chastise or curse him.
Consequently, before Shukracharya came to his house,
Consequently, before Shukracharya came to his house,
Vrishaparva went out and fell down in the street
Vishaparva went out and fell down in the street
at the feet of his guru
at the feet of his guru
and satisfied him,
and satisfied,
checking his wrath.
checking his wrath.
Text 27. Kshanardha manyur bhagavan shishyam vyachashta bhargava kamosya kriyatam rajan nainam tyaktum ihotsahe. The powerful Shukracharya was angry for a few moments, but upon being satisfied, he said to Vrishaparva, "My dear king, kindly fulfill the desire of Devayani, for she is my daughter, and in this world I cannot give her up or neglect her." Srila Prabhupada's purport. Sometimes a great personality like Shukracharya cannot neglect sons and daughters, for sons and daughters are by nature dependent on their father, and the father has affection for them. Although Shukracharya knew that the quarrel between Devayani and Sarmishta was childish, as Devayani's father, he had to side with his daughter. He did not like to do this, but he was obliged to because of affection. He plainly admitted that although he should not have asked the king for mercy for his daughter, because of affection, he could not avoid doing so. 28. Tatetyavastite praha devayani manogatam pitra tatta yato yase sanuga yatuma manu. After hearing Shukracharya's request, Vrishaparva agreed to fulfill Devayani's desire, and he awaited her words. Devayani then expressed her desire as follows: "Whenever I marry by the order of my father, my friend Sharmishta must go with me as my maidservant, along with her friends."
Wow.
And 29. Pitra datta devayanyai sarmishta sanugatada saram tat sankatam vikshya tadartasya chagauravam devayaning paryachara stri sahasrena dasavat. Vrishaparva wisely thought that Shukracharya's displeasure would bring danger, and that his pleasure would bring material gain. Therefore, he carried out Shukracharya's order and served him like a slave. He gave his daughter Sharmishta to Devayani, and Sharmishta served Devayani like a slave, along with thousands of other women. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the beginning of these affairs concerning Sharmishta and Devayani, we saw that Sharmishta had many friends. Now these friends became maidservants of Devayani. When a girl married a Kshatriya king, it was customary for all her girlfriends to go with her to her husband's house. For instance, when Vasudeva married Devaki, the mother of Krishna, he married all 6 of her sisters, and she also had many friends who accompanied her. A king would maintain not only his wife, but also the many friends and maidservants of his wife. Some of these maidservants would become pregnant and give birth to children. Such children were accepted as Dasi Putra, the sons of the maidservants, and the king would maintain them. The female population is always greater than the male, but since a woman needs to be protected by a man, a king would maintain many girls who acted either as friends or as maidservants of the queen. In the history of Krishna's household life, we find that Krishna married 16,108 wives. These were not maidservants, but direct queens, and Krishna expanded himself into 16,108 forms to maintain different establishments for each and every wife. This is not possible for ordinary men. Therefore, although the kings had to maintain many, many servants and wives, not all of them had different establishments. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukhaṁ Karoti Vachalam Bhangum Lankayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatadine Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. King Vrishaparva understood that Shukracharya was coming to chastise or curse him. Consequently, before Shukracharya came to his house, Vrishaparva went out and fell down in the street at the feet of his guru and satisfied him, checking his wrath. The powerful Shukracharya was angry for a few moments, but upon being satisfied, he said to Vrishaparva, "My dear king, kindly fulfill the desire of Devayani, for she is my daughter, and in this world I cannot give her up or neglect her." After hearing Shukracharya's request, Vrishaparva agreed to fulfill Devayani's desire, and he awaited her words. Devayani then expressed her desire as follows: "Whenever I marry by the order of my father, my friend Sharmishta must go with me as my maidservant, along with her friends." Vrishaparva wisely thought that Shukracharya's displeasure would bring danger, and that his pleasure would bring material gain. He's the king of the demons, after all, right? He's not thinking, I'll get moksha, or well, I'll get some kind of blessings. He's thinking, get ahead. After all, it's Shukracharya, the demon's guru. Therefore, he carried out Shukracharya's order and served him like a slave. He gave his daughter Sharmishta to Devayani, and Sharmishta served Devayani like a slave, along with thousands of other women. So when I saw these verses in this purport, I thought, oh my, I'm so American. This is a kind of an alien arrangement for someone like me who probably, well, anyway, we don't know the background, my background for many lifetimes, but I'm born in a family that's been in North America for almost 400 years, and I was born a fifth-generation Californian, and all of a sudden I'm confronted with having to speak on this very exotic arrangement. So Sharmishta and Devayani had a little spat. Sharmishta tried to put Devayani in her place, saying, after all, your father is my father's servant in a sense. My father's the king. This is his court, and your father's his guru. Yeah, he's a brahmana and all that. But in a sense, he's like an employee. That's how she was thinking. And so they had this spat, and Devayani ended up in this awkward position at the bottom of the well, rescued by Yati. And now Sharmishta has to go along with all her girlfriends, and she has a lot of girlfriends because her father's the king, who wouldn't want to be the one of the pals of the king's daughter. And so there's this very interesting arrangement. So Srila Prabhupada says that this is, in that culture, this is not at all an unusual thing. Women needed to be protected, and there are generally more women than men. We're hearing post-election how 51% of the US population is women, is female. And we keep hearing that whenever we pay any attention to the news. And so there's supposed to be some significance for that. But so we have this very unusual arrangement. Srila Prabhupada refers to Vasudeva and Devaki. That Vasudeva married not only Devaki, but her sister, all her sisters as well, and they were accompanied by their friends. So we understand from Srila Prabhupada that we classify, one way to classify humans is by how they make their living. The Brahmanas make their living. They have 6 duties: patana, patana, yajana, yajana, dana, pratigraha. Studying the scriptures and teaching the conclusions of the scriptures. Worshipping and engaging others in worship, teaching them how to worship. And dana, pratigraha, accepting charity and giving in charity. Sometimes we think there may be some brahmanas who miss one of those, the giving in charity thing. But Srila Prabhupada explained that the culture of the Brahmanas is such that they accept whatever charity those who benefit from their service are able and willing to offer. And at the end of the day, whatever is left, they give away in charity before the sun goes down. They're not keeping some Swiss bank account or offshore bank account in the Cayman Islands or anything like that. But whatever comes their way, they use it for their service and to maintain their family. And if there's something left at the end of the day, they pass it on. The Kshatriyas, they make their living by taxing. They organize the whole society, they protect everybody, and in order to maintain, first of all, the government, but also their court, their own household. And the king needs a nice household because he has to entertain other kings when they come to visit. And people need to be a little impressed by his power when they approach him at court. So there's very nice arrangements. Everyone is maintained very carefully. And the Vaishyas are the producers. They produce the society's wealth, the community's wealth. So they grow the food, they take care of the they oversee the maintenance of the animals, the cows and other animals. They do commerce, business, banking, things like that. And they take some profit from that. And the Shudras, my friend and god sister Urmila and another devotee, Rukmini, wrote a book called Career Dharma. And the way they characterize what we refer to as the Shudra class is they're the people who make things beautiful. So they provide the labor, they provide the art as well. They're the artists and musicians, and they're the ones who make things nice for everyone. And in return for their service, the whole society maintains them. They make sure that they have what they need. They're not forced to live in poverty. So everyone is taken care of. So the king has, I think I remember hearing many years ago that Shri Radha Madhava Hare Ki Jai, Shri Gopal Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Hare Ki Jai. I think the kings would levy a 25% flat tax, apparently, on the Vaishyas. I don't think you would tax the brahmanas, and the Shudras don't maintain wealth. So there'd be a 25% tax, flat tax, so kind of off the top, and they would use that to maintain. So here, there's this very, very elaborate arrangement. So because the logic was that because there are more women than men, some men may need to marry more than one wife. So this became a thing in our society a few decades ago. Devotees talking about, well, got to protect the women, so we have to try out this plural marriage, and there are a few things to note about this. One is that Lord Ramchandra, I had an exchange, I guess on one of those websites we used to have back in the 90s, maybe Chakra or something like that, with one of my godbrothers who was advocating for polygamy or plural marriage, to really create a Vedic society. I mean, we have to be honest. We don't really know what Vedic meant. What Vedic meant was it meant different things even in different parts of India. Right? The culture in South India is different from the culture in North India, sometimes in some striking ways. And in Bengal it's different. So in the different parts of India, the cultures were a little different. They were, after all, in a sense, different kingdoms, what we might think of as different, a little bit different nations. So those cultures were a little different. So we have this idea that, we want Varnashram, and Prabhupada wanted Varnashram, and Varnashram means plural marriage. So we've got to do this. Srila Prabhupada, well, there are a few things to note in this regard. One is that Srila Prabhupada points out very clearly, right here in the 9th canto, that Lord Ramchandra, the ideal king, the ideal human being, that he modeled how to be not just a king, but how to be a human being. He accepted a vrat of having only one wife, Eka Patni Vrat. And Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, to the verse where that's mentioned, that this should be our standard. This should be the standard of the devotees nowadays, to accept Eka Patni Vrat, We have one husband, one wife. Of course, having more than one husband was a rather unusual situation. Not very common at all, but we know that Draupadi had to handle such a situation. But we have just one wife, and we, maintain that wife with affection throughout our lives until it's time for vanaprastha or sannyas, which is also not necessarily for everybody. So we have these. In the West, we have part of the marriage vow, I guess they call it, that the two of us will live together through thick and thin, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, that we will support and love and maintain each other. Well, but it's one husband, one wife. And then now there's one devotee who is advocating for plural marriage, responded by pointing out that Krishna married 16,108 women. He had 16,108 wives. And we should follow Krishna's example. After all, Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ramchandra is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's Shadaishvarya Purna. There's three personalities of Godhead who are Shadaishvarya Purna, full with all six opulences. Let's see how I do with the list. Wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge, fame, and renunciation. I always forget fame. I'm not good with lists. I have trouble sometimes even with lists of three. So it's Lord Ramchandra, Lord Krishna, and Lord Nrsingadev, right? So, he was saying that we should follow Krishna's example. And so I pointed out to him that Srila Prabhupada wrote in the Krishna book, when Krishna marries 16,108 wives, that Krishna did so to show that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to establish that he is distinct from us. And he says very plainly in the Krishna book, we can't do that. Just as he says in this purport, this is not possible for ordinary men. I mean, if we're honest, we have some difficulty maintaining a household with one wife and the kids and the cars and all the stuff that comes along with that. It's rough sometimes for most of us. Srila Prabhupada said, managing a household is more difficult than managing a kingdom. Because you have all these conflicts that go on between the kids, with the wife, between the mom and the kids and everything. And you have affection for every one of them, a little different kind of affection for each. But you have affection for all of them, and maintaining harmony and balance in the household can be difficult. As I pointed out the other day, marriage is not something to be taken lightly. It's a big commitment. I've often analogized, in a sense anyway, marriage with initiation, with accepting a spiritual master. Also, something not to be taken lightly. I know young devotees who've been practicing Krishna consciousness for 5 years. We probably have devotees even in this community who've been practicing even longer, seriously. Practicing bhakti yoga and haven't yet taken initiation. That caution in accepting initiation is commendable. And I analogize it further. We see in the third canto, when Devahuti marries Kardama Muni, the Bhagavatam points out that Devahuti served Kardama Muni with Vishrambha, with intimacy. Srila Prabhupada translates it there as intimacy, Vishrambha. And Prabhupada points out in his purport, there are two elements that need to be there. Vishrambha and Gaurava. We see Gaurava in, I think, in text 28. Maybe it was 27. That Vrishaparva had Gaurava, or respect, great regard for his guru. So Srila Prabhupada points out that the husband is to be served with Gaurava and Vishrambha. Gaurava means respect, and Vishrambha means intimacy. So both things need to be there. The same thing is there in the relationship between guru and disciple, right? What are when we were talking last night about those 64 angas of sadhana bhakti, the first 10 are presented as vidhi, or rules, or we can say dues, and the second 10 that Srila Rupa Goswami presents are nishedhas, or restrictions, prohibitions, or don'ts. So we've got 10 do's and 10 don'ts. And the first 3 of the do's are approaching a spiritual master, Sri Guru Padashraya, approaching the lotus feet, taking shelter of the lotus feet of a spiritual master. The second is Diksha Shiksha Adi, accepting initiation and instruction from the Guru. And the third is Vishrambhena Guru Seva, serving the Guru with trust, with confidence, with intimacy. This word Vishrambha is an interesting word, because this word is used in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to characterize the relationship Krishna's cowherd boyfriends have with him in Sakhya Rasa. That it's an intimate relationship. How intimate, you might ask? So intimate that they absolutely identify with each other. The cowherd boys don't see any boundaries between them and Krishna. They wrestle him to the ground. They call him names. They play games with him. They hang out. They identify so closely with Krishna that sometimes they even identify with his clothes. So that much intimacy. So the Guru also needs to be served both with Gaurava and with Vishrambha. Respect, awe, and reverence. This Srila Prabhupada stresses this throughout his books. But also with intimacy. What does that mean? He's my buddy? No. We do see the Guru as our dearmost friend, just as we see Krishna as our dearmost friend. Krishna tells us that at the end of the 5th chapter of the Gita, right? Suhridam sarvabhutanam. I'm the dearmost friend of every being. And Suhrit's a special kind of friend. Srila Prabhupada occasionally drew a distinction among 3 kinds of friends. Bandhu, Mitra, and Suhrit. And so Bandhu is like an acquaintance, somebody you know and you say hi to. Mitra is like a buddy, someone you hang out with. And Suhrit is someone who's always there for you. Suhrit means he has a good heart for you. His heart is very much yours. So Krishna's Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. He's the best friend of every living entity. Prabhupada always signed his letters, your ever well-wisher. You could translate that to Nitya Suhrit, right? And among the cowherd boys, speaking of the cowherd boys, there are 4 main groups of cowherd boys. You've got the Sakhas, the Priya Sakhas, the Suhrit Sakhas, and the Priyanarma Sakhas. So the Sakhas, their friendship with Krishna is very heavily colored by a sense of subordination, servitorship. The Priya Sakhas, their friendship is not sankula, not bundled together with other feelings. It's pure, kevala. And it's pure friendship. So it's not colored by any other great mood. And then the Suhrit Sakhas, they're a little older than Krishna. And they're looking out for Krishna. They're the chief of the Suhrit Sakhas. Anybody know who's the chief of the Suhrit Sakhas? Baladev, right? He's Krishna's big brother. What? God has a big brother? Not only does he have a brother, he has a big brother. And a mommy and a daddy too. And when they go out, when Krishna goes out with the cowherd boys in the mornings, Mother Yashoda will draw Baladev to the side and admonish him. I want you to do a better job today of looking out for that little brother of yours. I don't want him getting into any danger and any trouble. Don't want to hear any of those tall tales you boys bring back in the evening. And then there's the Priyanarma Sakhas. The Priyanarma Sakhas are the most intimate friends of Krishna's. They share an appreciation for Krishna's romantic feeling for Radharani and the gopis. They don't have romantic feelings for Krishna, but they appreciate and assist Krishna in his romantic dealings with Radharani. So the Suhrit Sakhas, they're looking out for Krishna. There's friendship is mixed with a sense of vatsalya or protectiveness. So, where was I? How did I get there? We're talking about Vishrambha, the cowherd boys. So this needs to be there. 2 things together, Vishrambha and Gaurava, in our relationship with the spiritual master. So it's not the same kind of friendship that we feel necessarily for our buddies, or that Krishna's cowherd boyfriends will feel for him. But there can be a friendliness underneath that. And what that intimacy actually is an understanding, being able to feel the Guru's heart, being able to anticipate what the Guru needs. Srila Prabhupada pointed out sometimes that the first class servitor is someone who just does what needs to be done. They know what needs to be done. They know what the other person requires, and they just do it without being asked. Second class servitor, when they're asked to do something, they do it very dutifully. The third class servitor, maybe a little resistant, might want, well, why me? Why that? Well, why water? Why do you want water? Isn't milk better than water, Guru Dev? I mean, you don't do that, generally. Sometimes there might be disciples who are protective of the Guru's needs, so they might say, well, are you sure you want cold milk with your peanut butter sandwich? Hot milk is better for your brain, it doesn't create so much mucus, something like that. And that would be someone who understands the nature of their particular relationship with the Guru. They can give advice. There's a devotee who's been staying in Honolulu for a while who looks out for me. How much sugar have you had today, Maharaj? Did you do your exercises today? Are you going to get down to the ocean for a swim? And I appreciate that depth of affection. So Vishrambha and Gaurava, intimacy and respect. So these are, all really kind of interesting things. So not only did Srila Prabhupada write here in the 9th canto that he intended that we follow this Ekapatni Vrat just as Lord Ramchandra did, but in letters to disciples he gave very clear instructions. He gave some instructions about, I guess, kind of how to do plural marriage, but it didn't work out. And his real instruction that he gave to several devotees was, don't do this. This is you're just doing this for sense gratification. It's really all about increasing your sense gratification. And I remember some years ago there was a television series called Big Love. And it was, the protagonist was the father of a family in suburban Salt Lake City, lived in Sandy, Utah. One of the devotees I know who lives in Utah lives in Sandy. And when I saw that she lives in Sandy, Utah, I thought of Big Love. And we actually watched this, former wife and I watched this this series because this guy was from a breakaway Mormon family, one of those Mormon groups that still practices plural marriage. So the guy had 3 wives, and he owned a chain of home improvement stores like Home Depot or something like that. And he had all 3 households right there on the same block. Each wife actually had a different home. They had an arrangement. The first wife coordinated the nights that he spent with the different wives. It was all very complicated. And that's where a big part of where the story comes in, is trying to manage that. Srila Prabhupada says, ordinary people can't do this stuff. Not only is it really expensive, but it becomes so complicated that it's sometimes just crazy. And so the wives were supposed to see themselves as sister wives. But sometimes he would spend an extra night with one wife or something like that, and all this jealousy would come up to the surface. So Srila Prabhupada admonished his disciples directly, don't do this. This is just, for you, this is just an arrangement for increasing your sense gratification. And our business is decreasing our sense gratification gradually. This sounds very interesting and exotic culturally to people like myself who are very American. And is something that we should not try to do ourselves. I happen to have known a couple of devotees who tried it. And one of my godbrothers who was well known for having tried out plural marriage, told me frankly, it was a disaster. Both marriages were awful. And at that time he was married to someone else. So nowadays maybe we have serial plural marriage. You get married to someone for a while and then you divorce and get married to someone else for a while. Srila Prabhupada wasn't in favor of that either. So we see how scary all this business can be. Shukracharya was incensed because of the way Sharmishta treated Devayani, and he came ready to curse the king. And the king, somebody must have seen him coming down the street, and so he didn't even wait for Shukracharya to get into his house, but he ran out and threw himself on the ground in the street with his head at Shukracharya's feet. So this also points out that we need to be very careful in our dealing with with the Vaishnavas, and especially in our dealings with the spiritual master, and not commit offense. And when we do commit offense, submit ourselves and beg for forgiveness. After all, the Vaishnavas are paradukkha dukhi. Their only real displeasure is seeing the suffering of others. So they're very easily inclined toward forgiveness. Another self-care skill, forgiveness. Gratitude and forgiveness, very important things. Okay, I'll stop here. Any discussion? Questions, comments? Anyone want to get me into even further trouble? Yes, Prabhu.
Is there some memory of Srila Prabhupada that you would like to share with us, something distinct or some experience that you have in his personal association that you would like to share with us?
I can think of three personal interactions with Srila Prabhupada that all have a different tone, different mood, somewhat different mood. The first time I actually met Srila Prabhupada personally was when he came through Honolulu in August of 1970. He was just there overnight, and he came to the temple to speak in the evening. We had really just spiffed up the temple in anticipation of Srila Prabhupada's visit. We painted the exterior of the temple. We painted the temple room, some bright, lively colors. I don't remember exactly. My memory says green and orange. So maybe. And the idea was to make the temple so nice that even the mayor of Honolulu, if he were to come to the temple, would not want to leave. The mayor of Honolulu hated us because the Waikiki business people didn't like us because we caused a ruckus in the streets outside their businesses and disturbed their customers. But we also painted the front steps with porch paint, I think you call it. It's made for painting concrete. We painted the front porch steps yellow. And we had just painted them, and the temple was back in a valley, Manoa Valley, near the University of Hawaii. And it rains there frequently. So we wanted to make sure that the steps were safe for Srila Prabhupada when he walked up the steps. So in case it rained, I was stationed at the steps with a towel to wipe the steps off, make sure they were dry before Srila Prabhupada used them. And I was also given the duty of taking Srila Prabhupada's shoes off and putting them back on when he came out of the temple room. But in the lecture, there are a couple of things. I'm only going to mention one thing that I remember from the lecture. We had just built the Vyasasana. That we finished it. It was finished about 15-20 minutes before Srila Prabhupada arrived. The women finished putting in, doing the upholstery, putting in the, pounding in the upholstery tacks and everything like that. Which is how we knew this was a completely transcendental arrangement, because there's no way in the world it could have happened. But somehow or other, by what my friend Mother Jamuna would call Krishna magic, we had it. The girls had it ready before Srila Prabhupada arrived. And the Vyasasana was opposite the altar, directly opposite the altar, in a bay window. And so it was up on the shelf that you have in the bay window. So it was elevated above all the devotees. But we didn't have time yet to put an umbrella over the Vyasa-san. So it was, but we had one of these umbrellas that we'd used to rig up back then. You know, you go to Long's drugstore and you get an umbrella, and you cover the top with red velvet, the bottom with gold lame, and you got pearls going down the ribs and a gold fringe around it. I actually held that over Srila Prabhupada's head as he walked through the airport. We were inside, but we were told, this is a respectful thing to do. So I got to hold that umbrella over Srila Prabhupada's head as we walked through the airport, which he found a little amusing, I think. He turned around, he stopped for a moment, turned around and looked at me and gave me a big smile. Just kind of like wagged his head. And so during his lecture, one of the brahmacharis was kneeling on the bay window, on the shelf in the bay window, holding the umbrella over Srila Prabhupada's head. And at one point in his lecture, he stopped and he looked at the umbrella, and he looked at the brahmachari. He looked up at the umbrella again, and he looked at the brahmachari again, and he shook his head and he said, "I don't think it will rain in here." Which was his humorous way of relieving the brahmachari of that particular duty. Another thing, another interaction that I had with him was 2 years later, when Srila Prabhupada came. He stayed in Honolulu for a couple of weeks. This is when he installed our deities, the Pancha Tattva, almost going on, about 51 and a half years ago now. It was in May of 72. And I had the good fortune of, when I moved into the temple, I moved into the temple just a few days before Gaur Purnima in 1970. And at that time, Govinda Dasi germinated the first tulsi plants. She sprouted the seeds, and a couple of the brahmacharinis took care of them for a couple of weeks. And then when they actually started to grow, she put me in charge of taking care of the tulsis. So that was my service, taking care of Tulsi Devi. And when Srila Prabhupada visited, we had, I think we had 8 large Tulsi trees growing in front of the rock wall and the easement between the temple property and the street and the curb. And some of them were 8.5 feet tall. And they were crowding the entrance to the temple. There was a whole story there that I could tell another time. And every evening, Srila Prabhupada, Govinda Dasi, after the class, before they left, Govinda Dasi would share with me things that Srila Prabhupada said about sharing his appreciation for our tulsi trees. We had hundreds of tulsis growing. And like I said, some of them were 8.5 feet tall. And I spent several hours every day collecting manjuris from those tulsi trees so that we didn't have billions of tulsi trees to maintain. And so every night she would tell me something that Srila Prabhupada said in appreciation of our tulsi trees. And after 3 or 4 nights, I looked at her and I said, "Govinda, I wouldn't mind hearing some of this firsthand." Hint, hint. So she took me by the arm, and Srila Prabhupada was sitting in the car waiting to leave. This was after the lecture. So she took me by the arm and she pushed me into the back seat of the car. Srila Prabhupada was sitting in the front passenger seat. Our temple president, Gaur Sundar, gave Govinda Dasi a scowl when she pushed me into the back seat. And she said, "Prabhupada, this is Baba Ru." Govinda Dasi's from Texas, so my name, Babru, has 3 syllables for her. "Prabhupada, this is Baba Ru. He's done all the service for Tulsi Devi since the beginning. And Srila Prabhupada turned around and he gave me a big smile. I have a picture of him in the car giving a big smile just like that. I don't think this was the occasion, but it was just like that. One of those oceanic smiles. And he says, Babru, that is very nice. He says, and we should always remember to always engage our body and our mind in Krishna's service. And I felt at the moment that he could see right into my heart. It was really clear. I'd spend hours a day taking care of Tulsi, but thinking about, I'm 25 years old. What am I going to do with the rest of my... I'm going to be taking care of Tulsi for the rest of my life. It would be cool, but I was starting to see that my brahmachari life wasn't sustainable in the long term. And so I was thinking about how I was going to make a living, who I might marry, all that kind of thing. And then the third thing I want to share, and I'll just share this briefly, I just want to point out the circumstance. Back in 1973, all the temples in ISKCON Hawaii, all the temples in the Hawaiian Islands were closed down. Our GBC gave up his service, but he also decided to close down all the temples at that time. And in the meantime, I had been given a mission to go to South America and spread Krishna consciousness. That ended up running into what I sometimes refer to as the buzzsaw of ISKCON politics, because I was serving. All of a sudden, when I had the money to go to South America, I got stopped and kind of turned back. So the devotee who was trying to revive ISKCON in Hawaii, Sudama Dasko Swami, who was a friend of mine, told me, okay, Srila Prabhupada's here in Los Angeles. My wife and I spent a couple of weeks at my mom's house in Santa Barbara County. And but I was in touch with devotees in LA, and I found out by calling a friend that Prabhupada was in LA. And Sudama Maharaj, who was trying to start ISKCON back up in Hawaii again, was staying with this devotee, so he put him on the phone, and he says, and Sudama and I were friends, so he says, Babru, Prabhupada's talking about Hawaii, he's not happy, you and Satyaki should come down right away and say Srila Prabhupada. So he arranged a private meeting for us with Srila Prabhupada. We were not big devotees. We were relatively unknown devotees. Prabhupada would not have recognized my name. I'm not one of those devotees. But Srila Prabhupada cleared his calendar for the entire morning to meet with us, to make sure that we had whatever time we needed to speak with him. And I'll tell you, before he wanted to talk about anything having to do with what was going on in Hawaii, his first order of business was seeing how we were. You're still chanting your rounds, you're following the rules, you're associating with devotees. Do you still like us, essentially? How are you doing? Are you doing? It was like taking our temperature. And then, only when he was satisfied that there were three of us in the meeting, another godbrother from Hawaii showed up at the temple the night before, and I introduced him to Sudama Maharaj and asked if this devotee Tarun Kanti could join us in the meeting. And Prabhupada, his first order of business is, although we weren't big shot devotees, he wanted to make sure we were okay. And then we could talk about what was going on in Hawaii. This is our Srila Prabhupada, a friend to all, our Nitya Suhrit, our ever well-wisher. He had a sense of humor, he could see where we were at, and he always wanted to make sure that we were happy. What is the Sanskrit? Sarve Sukhana Bhavantu, or something like that. That Prabhupada said several times, this is our business. I forgot to bring that up last night when I was talking about devotee care. We want everyone to be happy, and Prabhupada certainly wanted all the devotees to be happy. That's our Srila Prabhupada. Thank you. Anything else? We're over time. I'm in trouble. I'm afraid they're going to kick me out of here. Thank you all so much for your company and for your wonderful questions. Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Panchakalpatarubhishma.